Have you ever heard of the fighter complex? I'm not sure if you ever heard that, because I'm just creating it due to an experience that I had recently. The fighter complex, when a virtue becomes an addiction. Did you know the greatest virtues can become our greatest addictions, and our qualities, our greatest flaws? When it blows out of proportion, out of balance. This can happen to any virtue, but I will speak specifically to the virtue of a fighter, a worker, which I call it a fighter or warrior complex. This person had to fight their whole lives. Since they were young, they had the help of nobody. They couldn't count on anyone, nor even their own parents, from a bad place, and they could only count on themselves. And usually, they came from the countryside or a poor area of the country, and they moved to the big city. And they came after their place under the sun. And everything that they are conquering and achieving, it has been by working their fingers to the bones in such a way that they have always developed themselves hearing, so and so is such a fighter, hard-working person. It doesn't matter if it is day or night. The person always heard others saying that about them. And the more they hear people speaking that about them, the more they dedicated themselves to their work, because they have to keep the myth. Am I right? When we hear something about us, we need to keep that reputation. So with lots of work, they achieved what they have today. And they can be called successful professionally, at least compared to others who came from the same place that they came. Like their siblings or parents. They never allow themselves to rest. And you may even hear them. I'm for so many years without taking holidays, vacation. They're even counting. Listen, 20 years I haven't had holidays. In other words, your life is about working. Sorry for laughing, because it's funny. When you see someone with this complex, they end up doing things that is funny without they even noticing. Please, I'm not diminishing the hard-working person and praising the lazy one, because it's way better to have a warrior fighter complex than a lazy complex. However, as I said, every virtue can become an addiction, because out of all addictions that is in this complex, that makes the person not to be lazy, they wake up early, they go to bed late, they sleep just for a few hours, they fight, they go down, and they stand up straight away. They can live in this character and only live for this, and they can end up sacrificing other things that can be even more important than their work or to be successful. For example, where can you fit the family and the life of this person, their spouse, their children, in the life of one who has a fighter complex? Of course, they will say, I do all this for you. Of course, they will say that. I do this for you. But the family is on the sideline, waiting one day, but this day never comes because there's no rest for that person. So where is their family? their time with God. The person always justifies themselves by saying, I don't go to church, but God knows. I send my offering, I don't go there, but I send my tithes. They think that God needs their money. I don't go to church, but I send my money, my offering. I do charitable works. Actually, I'm working to give offerings, to support the work of God. I want the work of God to prosper. That's why I need to work harder. So everything in the life of the person revolves around their fighter complex. If they are sick, they don't go to the hospital. If they have an infirmity, they go to work sick. If they go to the doctors, they will say, no doctor, I don't have that. If the doctors say that they have something, because they think that they are unbeatable, because they always had to be like that. So this complex leads people to be successful in what they do, in their work. Everybody count on them. Leave it with me. I will make it happen. But they are a failure in other areas of life, in their love life, in their family, in their spiritual life. And when things start to go wrong, because they don't only have success. Often, those who have a fighter complex, they need to keep up with this complex because everything was so hard in their lives and nothing was ever easy. And I understand that in life, there are times we need to be fighters, real fighters, otherwise we die. But the fighter that has this complex, they never reach a point that they say, enough, I overcame, now I can reduce the speed. No, they're always fighting because as they succeed, they also lose because they don't have structure in the other aspects of their lives. They succeed in their finances, but they divorce, and half of their fortune goes towards the divorce. Now they work even harder because they lost half of what they had. In a marriage, there was a failure, but they think that it was their wife who didn't understand that he was a fighter and couldn't appreciate him. Do you understand? So the spiritual intelligence, the Word of God shows us that we cannot be unbalanced. We cannot bend towards a virtue with so much intensity that it may end up becoming a flaw, a defect. In the book of prophet Isaiah, God speaks of a people just like that. Isaiah 65, he says, I have stretched out my hands all day long to a rebellious people. Look at this. God is stretching out his hands to help these people, but they were rebellious, who walk in a way that is not good, according to their own thoughts. In other words, it's just in their heads. A people who provoke me to anger continually to my face, who sacrifice in gardens and burn incense on altars of brick. So a people that, even though were rebellious towards God, they were not walking in a good path, walking according to their own thoughts and ignoring God's, they would sacrifice. They would perform their religious ritual. Yes. Because a person can become religious, which is completely different from one who fears God, who knows God. And these people say, keep to yourself, do not come near me, for I am holier than you. They think that they are so holy, so enlightened, that they put themselves on a pedestal and the rest are under them. Do not come near me because I'm holier, I'm perfect, you are a sinner, don't draw near me. Which is this complex of a fighter. They look down on others who are not as much of a fighter as they are. So this complex is mixed with imbalance, a spiritual blindness. The person becomes blind because they can only see their addiction, but they don't see it as an addiction because it is a virtue. How can you criticize someone for working hard, for fighting? It's hard, right? But if they don't understand that a virtue or a quality can become their worst flaw, so they double their efforts towards that until the day that they die from that addiction that they exalted. So what do you need? What does God call us to do? He calls us to have balance. God is a God of balance. God is not a God of extremes. He gives us understanding. He spoke about mercy, righteousness, and faith, which are things that balance each other. If you're not too merciful, you will commit injustice. If you are too merciful, you will be a fool. And if you have no faith, you do nothing. Jesus spoke about that we must practice righteousness, faith, and mercy. These are things that keep us balanced. We cannot lean or bend towards any of these sides. If you cannot have this balance, if you tend to be unbalanced, whether to be a fighter or any other kind of virtue, so ask God for balance. Pray to God and ask Him to make you more balanced. Say, Lord, I don't want to be someone who is focused on one thing and I can only see that thing. I want to have a broader view of things and show me where I'm doing wrong, where I'm doing too much, harming myself and others. Ask God, be humble. Ask Him. No children of God has complexes. We have no complexes. We are children of God. So we realize that we are on a journey, improving ourselves and aiming to get as close as possible to the image and likeness of God. We have no complexes, neither pride of virtues or qualities, and we are very aware of our flaws. That is why we are always asking God for mercy. My God, forgive our debts as we forgive our debtors. This should be the stance of someone who has any kind of complex. If today's video helped you and you know someone that could benefit from it, share it with them. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you may do so now. See you later.